This podcast is part of E2C Network, where we share the whole Auburn experience. David Housel described it best. We are living the whole of the Auburn experience. You can quantify it or qualify it through a variety of methods, time, people, places, and things. But at its heart and at its core, the Auburn experience is all about three things: Auburn sports, Auburn culture, and Auburn family stuff. An easier way to say it, though, is if it's orange and blue, it is what we do. So thank you so much for joining us in what we're going to be doing today on episode 143 of the Auburn Experience podcast. I'm your host, as always, Kyle Loomis. And when I can decide to bring him into the screen on time for the show, Mr. Austin Scott, my co-host, is back. Welcome back.
Thank you, sir. You know, I was just hoping I could have like the Chris Collinsworth like slide in to sit next to Al Michaels. I thought that would be a great effect, but nonetheless, we don't have that quite yet.
You know, it was funny. I was sitting here watching, and then sorry for the audio folks. This is one of the joys of getting to watch the live stream. And even y'all don't get to see this in the backstage. I can literally see Austin down in the corner just waving at me constantly. And I'm like, what is he waving at me for? It's like, does he know he's on camera? It's like, oh, he's not on camera. Anyway, this is the joys of watching the show. We appreciate, no matter how you guys get it, watching, listening to all the different formats, watching clips throughout me. This is what you get here. Sometimes we're just kind of bringing the show together as best we can. Sometimes even after trying to understand games like we just did. We got, I know we say it a lot, Austin, but we got a lot to talk about this week, a lot to discuss, a lot to break down. We will discuss Oklahoma, and we will discuss the questions about the game. Not so much questions anymore, but how do we process the things that have been confirmed? And yes, Auburn potpourri segments with lots of different Auburn news topics. So, yeah, look, I'm going to do my best, Austin. I want to jump ahead to main topic number 2 and just start right into it because I have so many thoughts about that. I know you do too. We're going to be good, though, and we're going to wait and get to the point where we can digest that just a little bit. But what I will admit to you is this weekend, as much as I loved having a weekend off in the sense of no travel, things like that, I am missing already being on the loveliest village in the plains. It's amazing. Like you think I'm going to benefit so much from being home and not having to do all the content stuff that I normally do when I'm out there. And then you're sitting here and you're like, yeah, this is nice, but man, right now I'd be doing this, sharing this. I'd be at Tiger Walk right now. The Eagle Flight would be happening right now. So I just want you to know and remind you, I continues to be jealous of you and that you get to stay in the loveliest village on the plains.
Well, it was another beautiful weekend, another hot one, but another beautiful dry weekend in the loveliest village on the plains. I do want to shout out my wife. She turned, I'm not going to say it, redacted, her birthday yesterday. Her birthday was yesterday, and so Emily and her family were in town, and we got to celebrate her all day with some good college football. But we took our campus walk even on away weekend.
Yeah, I was going to ask, do y'all still do that or not? Or yeah,
we still try to, but especially did with the family in town and had to make the rounds and had a lot of siblings and brother and sisters-in-law who graduated from Auburn but haven't been back in a little bit. So got to show them some new sites and construction and all the things. But it was quiet. There wasn't a lot of people out and about like normal, but it was still a good time to be out on campus.
Yeah, well, happy birthday to Emily, but I don't even actually know what birthday this is. We're just gonna say whatever one she wants it to be.
That's right.
That's what it is. You know, it's funny when we think about that. Why do we not get as weird about? I mean, I don't know. Do you get weird about how old you are?
No, I don't. It just doesn't bother. I've had gray hair since I was 17.
You brought it up, not me. I wasn't gonna bring it up.
Look, that's been the butt of many jokes for me in the last 20 or 15 years. So it's more that for me than it is an age.
But you've got a great setup though, Austin, because you can explain why the gray hair got there so early is because you've been an Auburn fan for so long. And just
I can hear Emily saying I need to stop saying it was her and say it was being an Auburn fan. Yes, that is what I should be saying.
Well, listen, as long as I've known you, I think you and Emily have been dating. So I don't know that she's contributed that much. I would lean more towards, especially after weekends like this, with what we're going to be diving into.
That's right. Well, when you throw in any Auburn athletics event, and then the two nightmare twins that are next door to me causing a ruckus right now, who you might hear through the camera tonight. There's plenty of gray to go around.
It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Here, a quick aside too that I just popped into my head. I know one of the big things that people lament about Auburn is always growing, and people want to keep the small town vibe. That new hotel that's on is
That
it
would be
North Gay
cool.
Street?
That would be gay. Yes.
North Gay Street. So that one is about to open on the Georgia weekend, which is like perfect timing for all of the influx of people that are going to be here, regardless of what the record is for Auburn and Georgia when they arrive. I'll be honest with you, Austin. I think we're going to set records for this particular game just for like capacity for the town, because how much Auburn and Georgia fans are itching to be in a night game situation, whether it's at their place or ours, or at least here. And it's been a decade at least for that. So I wonder how much. I saw people saying, well, that's going to help for that weekend. And I was like, I think you underestimate still how many people are going to be coming to Auburn for that Georgia weekend.
Yes, it will help. I don't know how much of a dent you're going to put in it, but it'll certainly provide more beds for heads. So we'll just have to see. But I hope that they were busting their tails to get it done for that weekend, because that's the optimal time.
Yeah, it better be ready to go, because it is an optimal weekend, and man, it's just probably only get better. I think we can probably safely, at least SEC Nation will be here for that one. I'm just going to bet on that one.
I think so, yeah.
If Auburn can pull off something here, we might still have an outside chance for a college game day. I don't know. Maybe. We'll see.
I don't think it's out of the question.
It is not out of the question, and maybe it would have already not been in question had I told you I wasn't going to talk about it.
Here we go.
Here I go again. All right. Let's jump into Auburn potpourri and get started talking about some of the other news. This is news that's actually going to change within just days of us doing this episode. We record on Sunday evenings, and this is news that's going to be breaking in its official sense on Tuesday evening. As happens most times in seasons, during football seasons, you get the updated schedule, or at least something for like SEC schedules for the upcoming years. The SEC announced last week that they will be officially releasing the SEC schedules for the next 4 years. Am I correct on that, Austin?
Yes.
Next 4 years.
Yep.
And then you will get your quote unquote, I think it's annual is the term. I think permanent is what people keep saying, but it's more annual opponents. And they have openly said that it is going to be reassessed every 4 years, which is why it's being planned out for 4 years. So we've talked about this, and certainly I think you and I will spend a big portion, if not a main segment next week, diving into what we find out. I'd just like to know, do you have any other predictions? Any change of I know what you want. I know we've discussed that, but what do you think is going to be the announcement for Auburn's 3 annual opponents in football?
Yeah, I think in true SEC fashion, we'll get a nice hour-long special on Tuesday night that'll just drag it out, I'm sure. Just give it all to us at the beginning and let y'all talk. That's all we really need to know. My guess is, man, I'm going back and forth. I'm gonna say that they give us what I want, and I'm gonna say it's Auburn. Yes, Auburn will be playing the
themselves.
games.
Yes, which is
scary
true
enough in itself. Alabama, Georgia, and Mississippi State is going to be my prediction.
See, I thought you were going to say Alabama, Georgia, and the refs, but
that's a given.
That's a given. So you say officially Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi State. Sure. I think that just makes too much sense, but my gut is now telling me it's going to be Vanderbilt, because of this notion that we are going to evaluate this every 4 years. And I think people recognize the difficulty that comes with playing Alabama and Georgia every year. Currently, times will change. Yes, it is coming, Alabama fans, and it's kind of already happening right now. I think Vanderbilt is probably what's going to happen. So I differ from you just by one team, but we both knew that the Iron Bowl, Deep South's oldest rivalry, was going to be preserved. We'll find out in short order, because it'll be just a few days after you're listening to this episode, and we'll talk about it on the next one. Next up, we got to talk about some more unpleasant things. And you and I have mentioned this on previous episodes, and I know it's not everybody's cup of tea for us to dive into this world, but as we sit here today on Sunday on the just hours after the memorial for Charlie Kirk and everything that happened the last couple of days, week or so with that, today was not his funeral service. That's going to be more private, but a memorial that was put on by his organization and everything else. This week I feared this was going to happen, Austin. We saw a lot of this happen across the country of people just being very insensitive towards that situation and being very just hateful, just absolutely hateful towards someone that they disagree with. And a lot of times it was in the world of employees of universities being saying some very disgusting things. And unfortunately, it eventually did get to Auburn. There were some individuals, I'll just say, because I don't think we know the official word on how many and who all it was that were let go because of their insensitive remarks on social media. Been a lot of discussions about, is this a free speech issue? A lot of discussions about, right, wrong here. I think one of the things, and this is what I am speaking on here is my personal opinions. Austin has his own, and everybody else is entitled to their own on this. But what I want to be very clear to folks is you are free to speak whatever you want for the most part, outside of, what is true hate speech. It doesn't mean that removes you from consequences. And I say that to myself. It's one of the reasons that we're sometimes very careful what we say here, because we recognize there are consequences, some small, some big, for what we say. So President Roberts put out, I thought, a very well-written statement and addressed the issue, quoting, the values that Auburn has. And I continue to point back to that for a lot of the reason that I make on some of those things. And it definitely doesn't align with the line in the Auburn creed of mutual helpfulness and bringing happiness to all. And so I very much agree with the statement. I hate that has to happen to that individual, but they made their choices and there are consequences for that. But, if there's any thoughts that you had on that, or if anything that you wanted to add.
I think you put it well that, free speech is a constitutional right in our country, that we are blessed that is not a right for many around the world in other countries. And we thank the men and women who have literally laid down their lives for us to continue to have that right. And that is protected by, in this country, that you can say what you want. But I think Kyle put it very well that you are not free from consequences of that speech. And as with employers or with, the maybe non-professional consequences that come with it, whatever it be, it's still very important to realize that, what you put out on social media can and does have consequences. And, we saw that play out in a real life way at Auburn and across the country this week.
Yeah. So I hope that we're now going to see less and less of this, but unfortunately it did get to the plains as it kind of swept the country. Some of these discussions that were happening, sometimes a little bit too much, and sometimes just because I would remind folks, just because you have the ability and the freedom to say something doesn't mean you should. With that, trying to move away from some of those more serious topics here, I do want us to discuss some more schedule news. We love talking about schedule news here. It gives you more reasons to come to Auburn, things like that. And Auburn Gymnastics has finally put out their 2026 schedule. It throws me off, Austin, to be honest with you, because every once in a while you'll get an official meet, not just like a preview scrimmage or orange and blue meet situation, like in December. Not this time. So you have to technically call it the 20. If that case, you would have to call it the 25, 26 schedule. This is the 26 schedule outside of them having a preview meet or something like that. Look, I love this schedule just looking at it. I'm not going to sit here and act like I am the expert on all things gymnastic. I just see a lot of variety here, a lot of things to like. Anytime you have Alabama on the schedule at home, boy, that gets people in the seats. And so let me run through it real quick, and I'll let you say anything that points out to you. At home versus NC State, on the road versus Arkansas, at home for Florida, road Georgia, home for Kentucky, on the road for LSU, but then at a neutral site with North Carolina, NC State, Boise State, at home for Alabama, on the road with Oklahoma. That's going to be a tough one. Michigan State at home, and then elevate the stage with Clemson, Georgia, and Pitt for another 4 quad meet there. And then we end with Missouri at home. So that's your schedule for the 2026 Auburn Gymnastics. What sticks out to you?
I think it's a heck of a home slate for one. And we renewed our tickets earlier this week. And so we're pumped to go. If you don't know, and if you're able to, that's one of the easiest and cheapest season tickets you can get in Auburn. And certainly it's gone up in recent years because of popularity. But it's still a very, very easy and fun meets to go to, and I think you're jam packed with the good ones this year with certainly Alabama, Florida, Kentucky, and Missouri. Are those the 4 SEC? Or did I miss one?
Say them again. Which ones?
Alabama, Florida, Kentucky, Missouri. Is that right?
Yes, you got it.
Yeah.
Well done.
And then we don't host the 4-team one, right? That is elsewhere. Is
Yeah.
that right?
Yeah, that's right. That's correct. You got that.
Yeah. So I think it's a fun year, and it's going to be a good one. There's certainly a lot of hopeful returners that maybe got injured toward the end of the year, or that youth at Auburn Gymnastics was certainly starting to elevate and prove that they can belong. Now they take a second year, so it's going to be really fun to watch this year, I think. And I think we'll be talking about them a lot.
Oh yeah, yeah. So what I like is the variety. Like I said, you've got two. I think there's normally one quad meet every year. Like Elevate the Stage is usually the one you go to, but I don't remember two of those in a year. So that just gives you a lot of looks at people. And twice for NC State, you host them and then you see them at the Metroplex Challenge. Going to Oklahoma, Michigan State at the end just feels. I just don't think of Michigan State and gymnastics a lot.
Yeah,
you think of them for basketball, for football. But so I'm intrigued with this schedule, and it's very exciting to me, especially as you said, having Alabama here is such a big thing. So
it'll be big. I mean, I think the Florida one's huge.
Oh, that too.
I think both of those will have very, very big meets or attendance records.
Yeah.
I wish I'd done some more research and figured out what weekends those are for with matched up with basketball. But I'm sure
we'll do that eventually.
We'll hit on another weekend to get to soon. But those are very easy turnarounds, so that it doesn't necessarily have to be an away weekend for Auburn basketball. So
right.
I think those will be fun to look into.
Yeah. And just to add what you said, we now have the men's schedule. The women's schedule, I think, is complete now, if I'm not mistaken.
So. Yep.
And now we have gymnastics. So that should give us all that we need for the most part. So we'll look at doing an episode very soon about the winter weekends that you should be thinking about coming to the loveliest village on the plains to support gymnastics and everything else that's going to be happening, sports or otherwise, in the Auburn Experience. Moving right along in our potpourri segment, we got a few other things that we want to make sure that we hit. Let's talk about those concerts that were announced. You and I talked about the story of Auburn going to utilize Neville, utilize Jordan Hare at some point. Nothing really announced for that yet, but this past week we got two big announcements. For those of you that think Auburn's just a college town, for those of you that think Auburn's just about sports, that is wrong. That's why we do this show, the Auburn Experience. You now have two opportunities coming up in the near future to go see some other things on the plains and maybe pair them with some other things that may or may not be happening. I haven't looked how they line up with things necessarily quite yet, but first thing that was announced this week, Campus Nights, which is going to be obviously through Peachtree Entertainment. This is all of that company partnership that helps organize these things. I'll be honest with you, I don't think I'm hip to the groove here, Austin. A lot of these names, maybe I'm just too old now, but Campus Nights is going to be featuring Josiah Queen, Holvey and Claire Leslie, which is going to be worship-driven music. I have not heard of them. Have you?
Never heard of him in my entire life.
I'm not too old. I'm not old as I thought it was. You got more gray hair than me. So.
I got more hair than you do, period.
Whoa! Shots fired back. Well done.
It came out and I texted Emily and she said, "Who's that?" And I said, "I don't know." I said, "This is not the first concert news I was expecting to hear from Auburn." And you'll get to the others in a minute, but I've never heard of them. But I'm sure, look, they know their demographic. I'm sure that there's youth screaming at us through their phone right now that how do you not know those individuals? I don't even remember their name. So I'm sure it'll be good. We'll hear about more. Maybe I'll do some research on it this week.
Saturday, November 15th, Neville Arena. And tickets are already on sale. Yeah, because it was announced before the Friday that it says that they're going to be available. So if you're interested in that, good night of worship, probably something you should be attending given what's been going on in the world, if you are a believer, especially. So please do consider that and check that out. Parker McCullum is the next one announced. That's for February 13th, though, in Neville Arena. It's also going to have Jake Worthington and Tyler Halverson with his special guests there as well. I think I'm somewhat familiar with this one. Looks more in the country music kind of vein. I believe I'm
bigger name for sure. That's more on the lines of what I was expecting to hear. So I'm not surprised. I think that one will be pretty heavily. The other one could be too. I feel like that one's a pretty safe bet.
And the interesting thing about this is in the middle of basketball, gymnastics season, all of that. So once again, I haven't looked how that lines up with everything that may or may not be going on. My guess is probably an off weekend for all of them.
I would think that is an away weekend.
Yeah. Because if this is as popular as maybe some people say it's going to be, this is another little good one to add to your repertoire. So you already got one in November. You got one in February. This is just the first two that they've announced. These are opportunities, once again, for you to come enjoy Auburn, even when the sports that you're necessarily following are happening right now.
You'd have to think, too, that, I don't think we're super far out from getting a Jordan Hare announcement sometime. It can't be in the fall. I don't think that's when you pull off in the off weekend. And so it's got to be in the spring semester or the summertime, I would think. So
yeah,
maybe we'll get some news on that too soon.
I'm still waiting for that Jeff Dunham tour. I'm telling you, the second that happens, man, the Zach Brown concert. The day that happens in Jordan Hare,
wow,
Jessica front row to like that day. I'm telling you, think I'm kidding, but she probably agrees with me on that one. We'll see if that happens though. All right, well, that's all we have for Auburn Potpourri, at least time for this week. Let's jump into our main topics this evening. We obviously have so much to discuss in this segment that we saved during football season for Auburn, recapping the week of football. Auburn versus Oklahoma. Is there something that's going on? You were froze on the screen there for a second, Austin, looking at me like this, like literally, like, what's going on? Am I doing something wrong?
I have nothing.
I thought you were trying to like see through the screen at me. Anyway, it threw me off for a second. Once again, that's the beauty of watching the show being made live. Okay. So, yeah, we do want to talk about the week of football. Yes, we are going to talk about the issues, the missed calls. A lot of these aren't even being questioned anymore. Everybody who is not a Oklahoma fan, an unreasonable Oklahoma fan, agrees with this. We are going to get there. We are going to, for this segment, though, set those aside. So please, while you're watching us do this, we'll try our best to stay away from those topics, but we are going to tackle all that in our last part of the show here. What we want to do before we give grades on the Auburn-Oklahoma game, acknowledge what happened. Obviously, 17-24, Auburn lost, first loss of the year. Not a bad loss in terms of perception of the results, who you lost to, where it was. If you're going to lose, if you're going to have this be your first loss, this is definitely the one that you want to take out of the other three that have been played this year thus far. There are some good stories that come out of it, though, before we give the grades. Alex McPherson on College Game Day got to share his story for the first time in as much detail as he and his family and everybody else has been willing to give. We now know from his own words that he had ulcerative colitis, which they thought they had fixed by going through a procedure that I think it's called a stoma is what it's called, where he has to have a bag, to help with that process after that. Jessica, she's watching this, is screaming at me like, you're just butchering this, Kyle. So like, just shut up. But it didn't work as much as they thought it would. And unfortunately, it was then diagnosed with Crohn's disease. Now, there was a lot of speculation, Austin, about what this was. I know this person that said this was, and some people were right, but I wanted us to wait to hear straight from him, the story, what he's been through. And boy, man, that boy's been through a lot. Just a lot, and very moving story to hear from him, and all mattered all the more to get to see him out there again on Saturday and make a field goal, make 2 more extra points. And so I thought that it was just a moving story, but really good to see him and see that his spirits are kind of high as he returns back to normalcy too. Definitely, and certainly he's being very honest with the coaches about what his strength is, and they're being very, I think, wise and not putting him in too many situations. Because another thing that can happen is it'll start affecting your confidence too. And he's been a pretty confident guy going out there and with 100% his freshman year. But we'll continue to watch his story, and we're just thankful that there seems to be a very positive track right now in terms of managing what he has to deal with, and what a resilient guy he's been. So we're very proud of Alex McPherson. Let's transition to the biggest story, which moves us into our grades and everything that we want to do to assess offense, defense, and special teams. Did you hear that this was the return of Jackson Arnold to Oklahoma? I mean, this was the new. It was news to me. There were some choice words I was trying not to hear through the TV, but it certainly, I think everyone knew if they didn't once they got in there. Jackson Arnold returns to Oklahoma as their former quarterback. The complex that some of these Oklahoma fans had in relation to him, I'm just like, did y'all forget that he won the Alabama game for you? Did y'all forget that you basically gave him no chance with the lack of support of an offensive line, had to deal with injuries. I'm not saying the dude was perfect. He was very young in his time. He had apparently 4 different offensive coordinators. Sounds familiar. So all of that, Austin, I think he did outstanding. I don't think he was perfect, but I thought given everything, as we're going to talk about later, that happened in the game, he showed up and showed out in ways that I think a lot of people were skeptical that he wasn't going to. And I think, for as far as I could tell, he showed a lot of class for the most part. I'm sure he gave a few fans, the business a couple of times, but that's to be understood. What did you think about him? And let's get some grades on offense, whatever else you want to talk about that with.
Yeah, it might be really unpopular, but I'm with you that I thought Jackson, for everything that he's been through and having to go through that, did a pretty admirable job. I think, we'll talk about the sacks here in just a second, but I mean, I think that—
How many of them?
There were 10, in case you weren't aware. But I think that there were times that those fell on him for not getting the ball out. Sure. I think he'd be the first to tell you that. I think there's times it fell on the wide receivers for not getting open. There's times it just fell on the offensive line. But for all that he was, I'm sure, emotionally going through, I think that he held himself together pretty well. There were times where I would just, probably based on scars of past quarterbacks and past Auburn quarterback play in the last decade, that I was like, oh boy, there goes that throw. Where's that going? And it was a great throw. His throws to Cam were on the money. Outside of a couple, I'm not saying it was perfect, but I mean, his scramble mode on 4th and 11, I don't think you can discount that at all. I thought that he did a good job, especially considering all else that was going on. And then with the offensive line, I'm not holding all their weight for him. I don't want to say it. I think but I do think that Oklahoma defensive front is one of the best Auburn's going to see this year. Yeah. And I think when you look at Connor Lew going out and Kyle Ellis coming back in, and then the switcheroo with that, and then some penalties and things like that, for them to only give up 10. And I know that what I'm saying, only give up 10 is pretty incredible to me, right? Based on everything that was happening.
Yeah.
It's not perfect, and it's not great. And I think there were points left on the board, and points taken off the board. We'll get there in a second.
Hang on.
But this Auburn offense, I was, for a road game like that, in that kind of atmosphere, we've seen just go absolutely flatline and dead so many times. I don't think they were there at that point. So I'm going to give them a C+. I don't love that with 10 sacks. I understand that, but I think that a lot of factors contribute to that. So I'll go C+.
Yeah. So first of all, the offensive line, I think once again, I try to be constructively critical about this group. I've been asking people not to just get overly excited about some very positive things that have happened in the first few games. I don't think you should take that away from them, what has been done well, but I think we should always be aware that, hey, SEC is really where you take a stock of what's going on here. And wow, that was a lot to take stock of.
Yes.
I agree that some of the sacks are probably more so on Arnold. He would agree with that as well, probably. However, I think also people are looking to place blame, as they typically do, on the easiest scapegoat, and people wouldn't they're used to blaming quarterbacks. So what I'm going to say is this: I think probably it's still more on the offensive line. A little bit upset about their play, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But once again, I think they have shown improvement in other areas, and they were going up against a really strong defense. As you brought up, really good spark was Ellis coming in with Connor Lew, who I said, oh, if this guy's out, we're done. We're done.
Mm-hmm.
Like this, we thought we had sacks this time. We're going to have more sacks now. He came in there and held his own. I watched his very first play, and dude just held up like a wall and said, hey, man, I'm like barely 17. Or whatever. He did an outstanding job. So we got to give some credit to him and everything that happened there. Wide receivers, fine. They weren't given. They got some opportunities. Some were overthrows. I wish Cam had finished running on his route, that one as well. People forget that. I sit at about a C. You got to give the offense credit for going down there and taking the lead in the fourth quarter.
Absolutely. After everything that happened, and I know we all want to blame one unit or one quarter, one person or something like that. But, we sit here and I see so many people say, well, Jackson's got to throw the ball, get the ball out more, well, if he's holding certainly there's some points where it's like there's a read, you just wing it, just go for it and wing it. But there's also a point when we're sitting there and seeing him stand in the pocket and wait. Well, he's being given time too, so it's not. There's give and take here. You can't say the offensive line is absolutely getting smashed when they're being able to give him time in some areas, but then the quarterback is also not throwing the ball. So it's both. And I think as a unit, they all have to work together. We've said that so many times on the show that it all has to work together to be able to work. WT, one of our viewers and loyal listeners here too, also brings up that a lot of quarterback design runs ended up in the backfield.
It was not. That's where I do agree that I think once again, I think some subsec is focusing too much on bad coaching decisions. I do agree that was tried one too many times.
Many times. And I totally, I felt myself saying, we've seen that doesn't work several times. and I was going into the game really thinking, I thought Damari Allison and Jeremiah Cobb could have a big day. They did have shining moments. And I think, like you said, we just tried maybe to fit that peg in a square hole one too many times there. But look, against a really good Oklahoma defensive front like that, a really good defensive-minded coach in Brent Venables, you live and you learn. I really think it'll help Auburn down the road to have gone through this game and still have every opportunity as bad as maybe the offense felt.
I think there's a lot of blame to go around. I think there are some good things that did happen in this, going down and taking down the lead. That's why I can't give them anything less than a C, because I did see things that were encouraging given all that was going on. Defense, look, so much talk about the defensive backs not showing out. We thought they were going to be a strength. What's wrong? Something must be wrong. But hey, boy, they showed up against an offense that was supposed to be one of the best that Oklahoma has ever had, because they've got one of the best quarterback they've ever had, is what we were told all week. John Mateer, I thought, is not bad. He's a good quarterback, but if that's what we're going to go off of as elite level play, outside of one drive, I don't know. I mean, maybe, the truth lies somewhere in the middle. I think Auburn's defense did an outstanding job for the most part. Wish they had held for that last little drive there, but you can understand they'd been fighting all game. And then you also got to give credit for Oklahoma and Mateer making the plays when they really count. So credit goes to them. I'm going to sit at Austin. I think I got to give them an A, given the context of the criticism that was around them, a lot of the different units as well. I think Sylvester Smith was the second leading tackler, so a defensive back. He's just just laying the wood on people. He came in there and just flew in the backfield everywhere. I just love watching Sylvester Smith play. What else stuck out to you, and what's your grade from the defense?
Yeah, I had an A too. I don't see how you can't. Like you talked about with John Mateer, I mean, it's been Heisman front runner all week long. Those are the words we've heard with him all week long. And I'm not saying he's not impressive. I'm not saying he's not good. And I'm not saying that their offensive coordinator and him don't have a good thing going. When they got humming on one drive, you could tell when they can get going, if they can get in tempo and have it smoothly operating like they normally do, then it's going to work really well. But I don't think that he did not impress me as much as I thought he might. And I think part of that, like you said, is somewhere in the middle, but I thought this Auburn defense did a really good job. I thought the defensive front was very impressive to me. Got a lot more push than a lot of people gave him credit for.
Yep.
And then the backside of the defense in the secondary did a really good job with key guys out. Jay Crawford didn't play a whole lot. And then Champ Anthony was back, but had some issues too with the cast, and
worried about that.
Caught him from being out there longer. So I'm not surprised that this defense showed up. I am surprised that it was as dominant as it was at times, and that they kept the offense in the game in a big way. I think DJ Durkin continues to make a very big name for himself on this Auburn staff by being able to have the defense play at such a high level. They quite literally contributed to the game, and it was stolen from them. But I'm holding off.
You tried so hard to hold on to this.
I think an A is very worthy, and I think that you should be very excited about this defense going forward.
It's probably an A+ if something else.
100%.
All right, special teams. Look, I'm still trying to figure out what happened with Hudson Cack, as I say. I don't really know what happened there. At low snap, I think there was maybe some questionable decisions. Anything that you want to add to that, or
I mean, whatever happened, it was a blunder, right?
Yeah.
Whether it was a mistake or called or whatever, a low snap or him falling down or whatever sets Auburn up poorly there.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of what happened or shouldn't happen shortly after it. And then Malcolm fielding the punt inside the 5 is very uncharacteristic of him.
And then his momentum carried him back into the end zone and had to run back out of it.
Correct.
So it's like, you got to go.
Just strange decision making by him. And then, Connor Gibbs getting his first field goal chance on the road at 50 yards. You'd hoped it, but just not a great day. Not a great day for special teams. I hate to say it, but I think there's probably some reminding and coaching of making sure certain decisions aren't made there, but that's not normal for Auburn special teams. But I think it's a D for me, just because I don't think it shaped the game. There are other people that shaped the game, but I think that it certainly did not give Auburn any favors in a game that they really needed to put forth their best foot.
Yeah, I think the only I really want to give him a D-, but I think Alex making his
that's about it.
Salvages it. So I'll go D with you as well, although I'm very inclined to go D-. Just definitely didn't help ourselves. That's the story of this, right? We're going to talk about it in a second, but Auburn didn't help themselves in a situation. I'll say that. Never mind. So that's our grades. We wanted to talk about the different elements where Auburn did some good things, could have taken responsibility for what happened. Yeah, we'll leave the grades portion at that. Now, this next segment, we have, dedicated it to the rest of the conversation. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk through each of the different, and there's 3, I think, main ones that we need to discuss. The third one's probably more, it's not as big of a discussion, but it adds to it. But at the end, we want to ask the question, did the game get altered by the referees? I want to say this loud and clear for I don't care what fandom you are, Auburn, Oklahoma, just some fan from another fan base trolling, whatever. We here, I'm speaking for myself. I think Austin agrees with me as well on this. We do not believe in just obsessing conspiracy theories about the refs. The refs are not out to get Auburn. There is nobody paid until you can present some proof of that to me. I'm just going to call you just a weirdo and think that you've got nothing better to do but just think about crazy things. However, you can't ignore some of the things that do feel like they happen a lot, and it do be like that sometimes, or it do feel like that sometimes, as the kids say. Auburn, your team, whatever, you should not put yourself in a situation to let the refs' mistakes affect the outcome of your game. Never should happen. You hold more responsibility 99 out of 100 times. I think for the very first time, we have a question of whether or not the game was altered. We'll answer that question at the end. But we're talking about 3 main plays here, which I think continuously just need to be questioned here. One has been addressed. So should we start with that one, Austin? The one that's
yes.
I figured, because there's no disputing this one now. The SEC has admitted fault. What are we talking about? We're discussing an illegal play that was not caught by the referees. So good on you, Oklahoma, for bending the rules and getting away with it. Like, credit to you. Now, what I want Oklahoma fans to recognize here is any defending of this that you're doing just doesn't help your case, doesn't make you look good. Your coach this has been by multiple sources. Your coach actively tried to do this and knew it was cheating and lied about it.
Practiced it all week, apparently.
Practiced it all week from a very low reliable source that's pretty well connected with that program. And to lie about it, act like you knew this wasn't illegal, that's real sleazy. So that's not a good reflection on them. All right. SEC office has admitted what happened. The player acted like they were coming off the field. They were instructed all year that you cannot do that. It's called the water bucket play. I ran it in high school as well. And look, when it was legal, it was legal. When it's not, it's not. And it was not a legal play. Should have been called back. Should not have been a touchdown. That does not mean that Oklahoma still doesn't score on that drive. I mean, it was still a lot of momentum shifting at that point. Austin, it's just so difficult to make peace with.
It's incredibly difficult to make peace with. And look, I'll be honest. it's very similar to Virginia with double dribble. Not a lot of us knew in the moment, right? Like not a lot of us knew right there as it happened, said, no, you can't do that. That looks like a double dribble because it went off your knee and then your foot, or that looks like a deception play. And that's illegal this year. But the pros and the SEC analysts, referee analysts came on very quickly after, said, you cannot do that. That was harped on this year. Coach Freeze said it post game. That was talked about pretty heavily all off season about not doing that. New and improved OC from Washington State comes over and decides he's going to do it. And so
and they off do people after he does it.
And so look, they, at the end of the day, the SEC has already assured us it's wrong. And so and that they'll handle whatever appropriate action they think necessary. And so, make sure the Band-Aids are out for the slaps on the wrist that are coming. But the fact of the matter is it shouldn't have happened. It did. They're not going to take a touchdown away, and they're not going to retroactively call it a tie. But it happened, and it's really unfortunate that Auburn falls the brunt of it. Now, I think that there's a real question of what happens if it is called. Because a lot of people say, well, they would have scored anyway. Well, I mean, we got the Heisman front runner, blah, blah, blah. It's 2nd and 22. You get a 15-yard penalty unsportsmanlike at 2nd and 37. And that's out of field goal range at that point in the game. And Auburn's defense playing like it was. I just think it drastically affected the game in that scenario, especially.
Yeah.
Put a lot of momentum on Oklahoma. Now Auburn, look, they came back and took the lead. We all know that at some point that they at some point did take the lead. But it should not have happened. And we count on these referees who are experienced, and we trust them to know the rules. They go through all off-season workshops, just like coaches and players do. And they, the head of officials, all these heads of officials come to media days all over the country and explain what the new things are this year and what they're doing. And in the first conference game of the year for both teams, we can't get it right. So it's frustrating. Yeah. It's unfortunate. I'm with Kyle. I don't think there's any kind of conspiracy against Auburn from Birmingham or these referees, like no matter where they're from or anything. I think that's absurd to mention, but it's unfortunate. But I don't think you can see any way it doesn't affect the game. And those that want to laugh and benefit from it, well, that's fine. But
don't worry about that; they're gone.
The conference has said what it is. It does not change what happens. Yeah. It does not change what happens, and it worked out in Oklahoma's favor. So props to them. But
as we said, props to you bent the rules. You knew what you were doing, and to lie about it and to defend it is just a poor reflection on your team, your fan base, all that kind of stuff. Certainly. And so just accept it. You cheated. You got away with it. It's fine.
Props.
Move on. Props on you too. Let's move on to the next one. Let's talk about the overturned fumble for a touchdown. Now, admittedly, this one, there's room for discussion about it, right? I mean, everybody, if you're an Oklahoma fan, you're going to say, well, he didn't complete the catch or he didn't make a football move. I think there's evidence to suggest otherwise there. But whatever you want to say. In terms of defending it, Auburn fans are going to say he did. Of course he did. Look, we all need to recognize our bias in this situation. The big thing is that it was ruled a fumble, run back for a touchdown by K and Lee. And that did not have enough evidence, in my opinion, to be overturned, because that is the rule of thing. It needs to be upheld. What's the official terminology there? Or
upheld is now what we're doing now.
Upheld, or evidence needs to be sufficiently given to overturn it, whatever. So that one is a huge momentum swing. First opportunity of the game for Auburn to just take the energy out. And unfortunately, it was the sign of things to come. So in hindsight of everything, if you want to, honestly, you could really point to this one as the one that probably made the biggest dent in the trajectory of the story. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, well, that one from the very beginning with just the opening drive for Oklahoma's offense and being able to see what I got to stop looking. What Oklahoma was driving and Auburn being able to make sure they go down and have a stop like that. Like you said, it's the call on the field, right? That's the biggest component of all of it. And what we all think is what that matters, which I think they're taught nowadays, to let the fumble play out and see what goes, even if he runs it back, and see what happens before we look at if it was a legitimate or not. They go back and like you said, and we're looking at it through orange and blue glasses. I totally recognize that. I don't see how there's enough to overturn and change what you saw on the field through the angles we saw. They did. And I think that is the most unfortunate part of both of these scenarios we've talked about, is that they both directly altered the scoreboard, right? So many of these times, these big plays we talk about, and it's like, well, we don't know what would have happened, or they might have scored anyway, or there were legitimate scores and into the end zone, and they were either taken away or they were still added. And and those do affect the game right then and there. It's not so much of a domino effect at that point. It is and how the rest of the game is played, but those are real examples very quickly.
Right.
No, I don't think that it was incomplete catch. And I know I've got orange and blue on right now. I understand it. But I just don't see how you overturn that. I think there's a lot of neutral people also who have contributed to that argument. At the end of the day, like we said, it happened and it went the way it did. Thought Auburn's defensive front did an incredible job holding them to a field goal there. It's still points they got on the board that Auburn did not. So
absolutely. Yeah, definitely some room for discussion there, but it's still very much more on the biggest evidence I will give of that is the neutral places agree with Auburn on both of these pretty much. So definitely the first one. Second one, still some discussion to be had. Now this third one, look, this is just kind of adding on to it, and it doesn't need to be discussed as much, because what this is just a referee not being turned around properly, which frankly needs to be addressed. I get that you're trying to get out of the way of the play, but hey, Auburn calls what was actually a really great play call to run a wide, I guess you'd call it it wasn't a halfback pass, it was a wide receiver pass, double pass.
What a throw, by the way.
Eric Singleton?
Didn't know it. Did not know he had that.
I was not familiar with your game, sir, in that way. What a pass. I mean, look, probably a little high, but it's Cam Coleman. And as he had been showing the entire game, you just throw it in his vicinity unless someone is literally hugging him. Can't argue this, Oklahoma fans. Pass interference the entire way. Literally, we have photo. You can go to our social media, got the image of him being hugged as he's reaching up to go get a little bit high of a ball, but it's in Cam Coleman's window, and that's the rule with that. It is, without a doubt, pass interference. The referee has his back turned, can't see it, and that's to take. That would have been. We did score eventually on that, so that's another argument from Oklahoma fans that you scored eventually. So it still matters because that's more time on the clock, which means if you guys score, we have more time to work with. Thus, hopefully our offensive lineman can get it together and not have a horrendous last drive. Wow. So, I mean, you had enough sacks already. What was a few more?
Right.
So I think it's as simple as that, Austin. It adds to the frustrations of this. It builds the story. The refs wrecked this game for Auburn. Is there anything to add to that?
Yeah, no, I think that it was pass interference. I don't know. I don't think they've asked the Oklahoma defensive back individual, but in college, it's just 15 yards instead of spot the foul. For all we know, he was trying to do it instead of give up the touchdown. But like you said, it was more in this case of the referee not being able to, the closest referee not being able to see. I wouldn't want to get run over by two D1 college football players either. So I understand him running. But I think that when you look at that, it's another example in this game of the referees having an issue just calling the game at all. You build quite a resume here. Now, like you said, and I totally agree about Auburn scored anyway. I understand that, and I think that that's a big key in this one, and why this one's not as big. The other two, we don't know how it would have played out. In this one, we got to see thankfully. you could even argue there was a little makeup call there if we want to go in solidarity here, Oklahoma fans, that there was that Auburn ended up getting the points anyway. And that certainly is a case to say, well, what does it matter? Certainly that is a big case, but no one wants to see the game affected by these referees, especially a marquee game like this. I truly think that this was probably the best game of the day. I didn't get to watch a lot of other ones. But
there was some good football, but this is good. Yeah,
I think this was one of the better ones of the day, and it's just unfortunate. This is what we're talking about, the majority of it, and all across the national landscape, not just on this show,
right?
Not just Auburn fans whining, quote unquote, but the vast majority of people across the country are talking about how difficult the officiating was in this game. So it's unfortunate. Oklahoma wins. Look, please hear me say, Oklahoma won.
And they did enough.
I predicted Oklahoma would win this game last week.
I did as well.
Right. Okay, so it happened, and I get that, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah. So
I will say this, and I just want to put this out there because I'm not like going all the way here. I'm not saying, but how unfortunate is it for our sport that if we get to the end of the year and this game is in the loss column for Auburn.
Yep.
And we're all talking about it on what it matters. Should they get in? Should they not get in? That's just not good for the game. It's not good for the game. And I think that's where most people are at. From most level-headed people are at with this is nobody wants to see these referees in black and white decide some of these games and affect some of these games. We want to see these kids who are now employees. We want to see these kids and all their talent be able to make the plays on the field.
Absolutely. So once again, to kind of conclude things here and answer the big question, let me just put this all out there because as you've been able to tell, if you've been in a live chat, there's been some typical responses from some Oklahoma fans. Once again, discussing something is not crying about something. It's called having a discussion. Adults understand that those that
there's not much else to do out there,
regurgitate the same things on social media and act like they're brave on. So, I mean, Oklahoma fans that have been good, that have been in the chat, that's your people. You need to deal with them. Or else we will. So, look, the question is at hand. Did the referees change the outcome of this game? We have walked through each one of those scenarios. Here's what I'm going to say, Austin. I'm even going to take the non-pass interference. Let's take that. That was worth discussion.
I'm honestly, I'm not worried about that one.
Let's go. So here's our.
I think all things were made even there.
Let's do that. Let's give the caveat to the Oklahoma fan base and to anybody disagreeing with us, which nobody besides Oklahoma fans are disagreeing with this, that are being reasonable. That one's out the door. The first touchdown being called back. That right there to me is big enough for the momentum, knowing what we know about the rest of the game. And look, it's a butterfly effect. I addressed this in the post-game show. You don't know what changes the trajectory of this and that and that, but we can make some assumptions. Oklahoma's offense really wasn't having a ton of success against the defensive Auburn for the majority of the game. So we can reasonably assume that continues. We can reasonably assume that Auburn's offense, while not outstanding, was able to move the ball enough to get into position to win, aka the fourth quarter win. So that alone, a 7-point swing right there, it puts it at least in the discussion of, hey, they probably would have been at least in a close, maybe a tie situation with that, maybe more so on the Auburn side of the momentum thing. When you factor in the inability to call the play, once again, if you continue to justify it and not just own it, it just makes you look bad at this point. You cheated. Your coach lied about it. You didn't get caught. Well done. Listen, that's part of the, this whole discussion about recruiting is like, it's not really how well somebody recruits, it's how somebody can bend the rules enough to not get caught. Look, we all know it happens. I'm not going to say that Auburn's not ever done something like that in a game or anything like that before. I'm sure people had problems with Gus Malzahn, and he was probably a little bit tricky with some of his things. But I believe for the very first time, I can truly say this, that the game outcome was altered by the referees. Once again, Oklahoma fans, hear me say this. You still did enough to win. You still deserve the win. I'm not even taking that away from you. I think people disagree with me on that because I said this in I think you deserve the win.
I agree.
It is a win in your column. Auburn was cheated out of the win. The outcome has come. all those things can coexist together. And if you can't accept that, you just can't be part of a reasonable conversation. Your thoughts?
I certainly think it can all coexist together too. And I hope that people hear this, and they won't, but they'll take snippets of this. But I hope that people can hear this and recognize that for Auburn people, it's the fact there's a sense of pride that despite all that, Auburn had to lead in the fourth quarter. Despite 10 sacks, Auburn had to lead in the fourth quarter. And now looking, and I think there's a whole picture here too of what Auburn football has been through in the last 5 to 7 years, is that despite all of that, Auburn still played enough and did enough to win, and it was taken from them. And I think that it's understandable to see it the other way with your team. We've got the most passionate fans in any sport that are in college football, are the most passionate fans, and I think that you can see. It was I don't know how you could say the game was not affected. We're talking about the outcome, and I think we both view the outcome as affected. And as no one's ever going to fully agree on this totally, and that's fine. At the end of the day, like we said, Oklahoma won the game. They've got 0 losses in their loss column. Auburn's got
Nothing's
1.
Going to change that.
We'll see if it plays out down the road someday. But I think Auburn fans, now I'm talking to our people that are still out there, I believe, despite what the viewer says.
A lot of rent-free space right now.
Well, there's not much to do out there. But I think that when you Auburn fans, you should be proud. There's a lot to work on. There's a lot to work on the offensive line, and there's a lot to work on this week before A&M comes up. Because look, the book is out on what to do against the offensive line and against Jackson Arnold. But there's a lot to be proud of despite everything that went down and how poorly maybe we played and how unfortunate circumstances the officiating was. That Auburn was in a road game in a top 10 environment for the first time in a long time. So look, just take a step back. We're all good.
It's all right. It's all right. You got the game. You got the W. It's fine. We're going to move on. You're going to move on at this point. And the reality is we need Oklahoma to continue to look good to make our loss look even better. So
that's right.
I can't say at this point, based off some of the behavior of them, that I'm probably going to be rooting for them, but I won't be upset.
I think they're going to be a daggum good team. Yeah, I really do. I think they're going to be a good team.
I do think they were a good team. So I think we've captured it all there. We spent a lot of time on just the football weekend. Obviously, there was a lot of discussions that needed to happen at that point. So we'll tie a bow on it there for right now and put that as the cap on everything right there before some more rent-free space comes out, as you can see it rolling in.
There are shows,
listen, there have been some very good. There are very good Oklahoma fans
certainly
in the chat, and we've got some of those. But some of y'all, anyway, Austin, as always, we want to say goodbye to folks before we live out of here. If they want to catch me, they can do so on X. I'm kind of on there at Kyle Loomis 24. E2C Network accounts everywhere. Just DM us, email us, e2cnetwork@gmail.com. Where can they find you?
Well, I'm hesitant to put this out there.
Do it. Do it.
At Austin G. Scott is where you can find me on X, on Instagram. Look, it was fun. Well, I think a lot of people had a really good time in Norman.
Oh, yeah.
From Auburn at their first time. And I've heard for a long time that it's a great college town, a great place. And I think that was proved by a lot of people who got to visit out there. So
definitely.
I hope that I get to make that trip one day. And hopefully we can all see a good game without the referees involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It'll be nice if that can actually happen, but that's SEC reffing right there for you.
There you go.
For all people involved in that, you'll learn eventually.
I was about to say, it comes back to bite you eventually. So just wait.
All right. With that being said, we're going to close out episode 143. Thank you so much for joining us, and we appreciate you being here. As we leave you, we want to remind you in the Auburn Creed, we ask you to do justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with God. Until we talk to you again, War Eagle.
War Eagle.